Hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. Joining us this evening is Dr. John Chase, author of Searching for John DeWitt, How 80 Forgotten Letters from the Trenches of World War I Reveal Timeless Lessons of Honor and Courage. John Chase is an orthopedic surgeon who retired in 2020. After growing up and going to school in Iowa, he moved to Florida for residency and practiced for 35 years in Orlando. Today, John is thoroughly enjoying retirement, and we love to hear it, spending time with his 5 grandchildren, playing golf and pickleball, and mentoring high school students with aspirations towards careers in medicine through Elevate Orlando. He and his wife Marion have 3 daughters with families in Orlando, Austin, and Atlanta. John is also the author of a memoir titled You What? Which I'd actually like to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, I'll tell you that story.
And writing has turned into an unexpected evocation, and he values the connections he's made with a wide array of people through his writing. John, thank you so much for reaching out to the podcast and for taking the time to come on this evening.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to do it.
All right. Well, I know it's been probably over 5 years or so, but still, congratulations on your retirement. You have earned it after a lifetime of working. So many
Thank you.
congrats. And if you would, can you tell us about that memoir and its title to
Okay.
begin?
Well, I initially I had no intention of ever writing. That was not a goal of my life. And one day, my X-ray tech says to me, "Dr. Chase, with all these stories that you're telling, says you should write a book." And I go, "Ha ha ha, maybe I will." And then I go, "Maybe I will." So, so I started writing little notes and little cards and putting them in my pocket, and just what I called memory joggers, things that if I did come back to write. And the title came from, we would ask patients how this happened, how did the injury happen, and they would tell me, and I would go, "You what?" That's exactly where it came from. And you would not believe the things that we hear. Sometimes you just have to bite, try not to laugh, because you're not
Right,
supposed to laugh when they tell you what they did.
right, right.
But I really enjoyed writing it. I got some good feedback about it, and I discovered that writing a book is a contact sport. Not everybody likes what you write or what you say, and so I've learned to have a thicker skin, and
Yes.
I have been But it's been good. It's been fun to do, and that's what led me. So when I heard about these letters, I thought, well, I've got some experience in writing a book, all of one, and so I said, okay, I'll do it.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic though. But like how awesome that I've done this once. I can do it again. And you've just dove right into it completely fearlessly. Like that's amazing. Like not letting anything hold you back. Now, to get into the book, um, so on page 125
Huh?
of your book, there's a photograph of your grandfather, and with the caption, "John DeWitt as a Griswold, Iowa attorney." Um, I have to say, in that photo, he is every grandfather that I grew up with in my neighborhood back in the day. Like when I was in grade school and stuff, everybody's grandfather was a World War II vet and was of similar age as your grandfather was in that photo. And just seeing that photo of your grandfather reminded me of all those men like in my neighborhood. What was John DeWitt like as you remember him?
Well, he was fairly nondescript as far as he died when I was a sophomore in college. So we would, but I do remember him. I knew him.
Sure.
We would go visit them in that little town of Griswold, Iowa, and we would watch football games. I mean, I remember he was just a very quiet, very self-effacing guy. He was an attorney, small town attorney. He didn't talk a lot. Certainly didn't talk about his war experiences,
Right.
and he was just a guy with a big belly and liked to smoke cigars, and I that's about all I knew. And then when he died, and then later on when we found his letters is when I actually began to get to know him.
Wow.
It
And he
was
never spoke of his war experiences ever.
he never did, and there was kind of an interesting thing because I didn't know this. So we my sister found these 80 letters that he had written home to his family when he was a runner in the trenches in World War One,
Hmm.
and she called me up and said, this is really interesting, and I thought, yeah, it is really interesting. And so I went and looked at them, but I had not had a previous, high interest in World War One. And so, and then in another box, so we found these 80 letters. They were in a shoebox sitting in an attic in Oklahoma City in my uncle's house. That was John DeWitt's son,
Hmm.
Jack. Found the letters, and so we looked at them. And then in another box, we found a letter that was addressed to me and to my uncle. And it was, and so I'll just read it to you here. To
Sure.
Jack DeWitt, this is in October of 1972, and I was a senior in high school. I
Okay.
was only interested in football and going to college. And it said, to Jack DeWitt, John Chase, and any other interested persons, you have asked me about my war experiences. I don't remember asking him, but apparently I did. And so he had this, and so he decided that he would. He sent this letter to me, and about these letters, and I thought, this is like my grandfather talking to me from the grave,
Yeah.
telling me you should do something with this, and so that's what spurred me to try to do something with the letters. I didn't know what to do with them at first. I kind of floundered, with no experience. I flounder a lot when I'm trying to write these things, but I got some help and decided to try to write the letter and write the book associated with the letters. Now I found out that if you just publish the letters, nobody's going to want to read them, and so what I tried to do with this was to use the letters as a jumping off point to explain what it was like to the soldiers in the war. I wasn't trying to do battles, wasn't trying to do troop movements. I was
Right.
trying to explain what it was like to those soldiers, from my grandfather's letters. So I was all excited. I went to go look at the letters and go, and I got done looking at them and I go, these are not, these are boring. I mean, I didn't, these are boring because, and then I realized that they were boring for a reason is
Hmm.
that one, they were told not to write home to their parents and tell them all the stuff they were doing that was dangerous so they wouldn't worry the parents and the families.
Right.
And two, that the letters were censored. So even if they did write something that was interesting, or and I actually have some of the letters where actually a piece was just cut out. There was a piece
Really?
cut out. There was, obviously pen marks, like they talked about a town or anything, but they just cut things out. So I was actually disappointed when I just looked at the letters themselves. So then that spurred further research, and I found a number of other books and magazines. A really good source was George Petullo from the Saturday Evening Post. And so I started looking and researching the stuff, about where they were at the time, so I could go back. I knew he was in the Rainbow Division.
Yep.
I knew that he was a battalion runner, so we could go back and look at the dates and then figure out from some of these other places where he actually was, and try to put it all together. What the battles were, and try to fill in the blanks that the letters left a lot of blanks. Yeah.
Right. So one thing, so I'm going to skip over one of the questions here is, so again, like the story opens with your uncle having kept your grandfather's letters for years in that shoebox, and like you said you received them, you look through them, like wow, man, like these 80 letters are kind of boring. But when did that moment, as you said, that like it's almost like your grandfather had left them for you and saying like do something with these. Like
Yeah.
how did you feel when you really understood that moment of like, oh, I know why I'm holding these letters.
Yeah. Well, it was in 2020, and that was right at the time when COVID had happened, and I had
Mhm.
just retired. So I mean, I had time, and so I started looking through the letters, and I felt like this is a treasure trove of information from the inside of somebody's brain. It's not so who was there,
Right.
uh, and he had never talked about it otherwise. He had never even mentioned it until I had apparently had asked him. And so that's why he then sent me that letter. And he sent me with this letter was a newspaper article about what it was like to be a runner in the trenches, which was a pretty abysmal job. I
Yes.
mean, dangerous, filthy,
Short
uh,
lifespan too.
very. I mean, he was really lucky to get out alive. I had people ask me, says, "Was he killed in the war?" And I says, "Well, if he was killed in the war, I wouldn't be here." So
Yeah.
no, he made it. He
Yeah.
did get injured. He was gassed and injured in July of 1918, and then he spent the last 3 months in the hospital, in one of the base hospitals,
Right.
and which was interesting for me to do the research and find out. And just I coincidentally he just got thrown into in the base hospital when he was able to work. He was sent to the orthopedic ward, and I wound up being an orthopedic surgeon.
How about that? How
And
about
he
that?
initially wanted to be a physician, didn't have the money to go to school, and so he wound up going to law school. And but it's kind of funny that he wound up in the orthopedic ward.
Isn't that interesting? Wow,
Yeah.
that's super cool. Um, there is in the letters probably part of that sense of like boring. There's nothing really going on in the letters. You mention an unspoken agreement between your grandfather and his mother. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that the letters were so boring, I said, wonder why? Why isn't he telling his family this? And so as we started doing the research, we found that they were told not to.
Right.
They were told not to upset their parents. And interestingly, all of his letters were written to his mother, except for one that was written to his father. It was after November 11th of 1918, which was
Yeah.
Armistice Day. Only us old people know what Armistice Day is. and 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 it was a letter written to his father, and it was the most gut-wrenching letter I've ever that I was kind of thinking I would see. And he said, now I know I was sent there, and now I know I'm not yellow. And to those guys, yellow meant they were being a cowardice. You couldn't say that today, but he says, I know I'm not a coward. I know that I can do. And he says, and you would be very proud of me. And that was important to him that his father was proud of him. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a theme. Like as soon as even when your grandfather was in basic training and boot camp, he was already like kind of looking at some of the guys and being like, some of these guys are slackers, which is another term they used back then.
Right.
um,
And yeah, and especially the conscripts. He was very he enlisted, but the people who were actually drafted, they looked down upon because they thought they were not doing their duty.
right, right. They waited to be called,
Yeah.
as opposed to your grandfather. Like,
Oh,
yeah. So your grandfather, from Iowa, he volunteers. He winds up being part of the 168th, uh, typically called the Iowa Infantry, 168th Infantry Regiment, which is a part of the 42nd Rainbow Division. So they're going to see. They're one of the first four AEF divisions to deploy to France. So they get into the line and they start to see some fighting, and then of course in July they're part of the big Second Battle of the Marne and everything. And you you mentioned this just a moment ago or a few moments ago. Again, like John DeWitt didn't share his battlefield experiences in the letters, not until the very end. But
Correct.
he did allude to his family that there was a way to know what he was doing. Can you make that connection for us?
Yeah. He said because he couldn't put it in the letters, but he says if you want to know what it's like, go to the Saturday Evening Post and find the articles by George Petullo, who was a very good writer, and says and he said this will be like getting a letter from me
That's it right there.
to George Petullo's, and those were some of the things that we looked at and trying to research it and what George Petullo said. He's a very good writer. And so that's how we filled the holes in these letters of both what they were doing and what's going on in the world. I tried to put in there what was going on in the world. There was a whole bunch of things that were happening at home. Lots of discrimination against German Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and this was also the time of the Spanish flu. So when we
Right,
went through COVID, they had way many more people died of COVID,
right,
or excuse me, of the Spanish flu. So
right.
all those things were going on at the same time, and I tried to put that all together to see what was inside the soldier's head, but was going on around the world and around in their country as well.
God, that's so amazing because your grandfather he's about 21, 22 years
He's
old.
21, exactly. He had his 21st birthday in basic training.
Wow. Wow. So for him to know to like I don't know to like really smart individual to be like, hey, look, if you happen to read this guy's newspaper articles, you'll know exactly what I'm going through here. Like
Right.
it's very, very well done. And George Patullo, to listeners out there, if you've heard that name before, I believe you mentioned this in the book. He's the one who broke the Alvin York story or
Uh,
mentioned it.
yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure,
He's
but
got
he was a very well-known writer
there's a
for that magazine.
there's a connection there to Alvin York that I'm kind of blanking
Yeah.
here right now. Um, but yeah, but we have but amazing, amazing. So despite all of this, like obviously, like your grandfather, he's a battalion runner. So trench runners, like when telephone lines failed, as they frequently did, radio communications were like barely around. So many times, delivering messages from the battalion down to the company level in the frontline trenches relied on trench runners, literally soldiers who would memorize the message and run it to the front line to tell the officers. Now, for listeners who may not be aware of this, the men typically memorized the message, of course. Why? Because if they were killed en route and the enemy later, came upon their body, they could find the message and know what the Americans were up to. So a lot of these guys they would memorize the message. So if they unfortunately died, as many of them did, the message died with them, and no information to the enemy. So your grandfather is a trench runner, and like everybody else, he's got a pretty short life expectancy on the battlefield here. But in his even though he's sanitizing his letters and everything, like your grandfather is still, despite all that, he is a pretty nonchalant guy. Um, can you
Yeah.
tell us a little more about that? Like you mentioned that he's always kind of quiet, like he smoked just cigars, like big fellow, and he was just
He was
always really calm.
quiet and reserved. He just didn't talk about too much. He certainly didn't talk about his career as an attorney. He was
Really?
just a real quiet guy, very humble, and very respectful. That's one of the things that I got from his letters. He was very thoughtful. In fact, one of the times, I mean, this was a really a conclusion I came to while I was going through this. Somebody asked me what I was doing. I said, I feel like I'm getting to know a very nice young man through his letters who also happens to be my grandfather, which was kind of eerie. But
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I got to know him and some of the things. One of the things that he did, there was one of the guys. I mean, it was very important for them to get letters, packages, letters from home. They was a big deal to them. One of the guys never got any letters. He wrote home, talked to his mother, and encouraged her. There's a lady that lived down the street from his mother who didn't have any children, and encouraged her to adopt this guy, send him letters, send him packages, send him cookies. And this would be my grandfather. He took half of his pay and sent it home. His parents weren't wealthy. Took half of his pay and sent it home to his parents. I mean, very, very nice young man, way nicer than me.
Honestly, we're nicer than me too. that's that is remarkable, and I think that was an expectation of those times. Like young men were still they were expected to help out around the house, like even after like having potentially having moved out. Um, just a remarkable window into the past. And now your your great grandfather, he was ill during this period, right?
Yeah, he worked for the railroad, and he was quite ill. In fact, he died within a year after my grandfather got after like in 1919. So he was fairly young, and so he'd been ill. His mother was taken care. He had three sisters. He had three brothers who died at in infancy and childhood. So which happened a lot in those days.
Right.
So. They weren't wealthy, but he came back and then decided to go to law school and made his career as a small town lawyer in Southwest Iowa.
And as far as you know, was did he always remain close with his mother?
He did. In fact, his mother went to live with his three. He had three sisters who lived in New York, and so she stayed and lived with them until she died. And then my grandmother on hit so John DeWitt's wife Helen's mother
Mhm.
stayed with them. So and that's something they did in those days. The children took care of their parents.
Right.
They did until it was over.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Understood. Understood. And we have so you write these letters, and as you say, like you're getting to know your grandfather, like as a young man, as a person, which is difficult. Not difficult, but like it it's a bit awkward, right? Like I sometimes think of my own dad, and like I see pictures of him when he was young, and it was like, oh yeah, he was a young man too at one point.
Right.
And
Right.
so how did you feel when you get to the end of you finish writing Searching for John DeWitt? Like, it- um, well, let's start there. Like, how did you feel when you finished it?
I was very first of all, I was just proud to get happy to get it done. How many people in the world say, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," or "I'd like to write a book," and never do? So
Right.
I was just happy that I was able to persevere and get it done. But I was also very happy that I got to know him. I was able to pass this in, and this was as much of anything as a family legacy. I have and none or no delusion that I'm becoming wealthy by doing this book. It's
Sure.
mostly for the family. And once I got all done with it, I said, this is should be I would think be interesting enough for people in the military, both active and retired, and then history buffs. So I was happy to get it done in the hopes to try to get it out to those people. Interestingly, I was told you're going to have a hard time selling many books about World War One. World War Two, World War, and the Civil War sell lots of books, but World War One does not, and it's turned out to be true. So, yeah. So I just keep, and I've also found that the skills of an orthopedic surgeon don't translate very well into marketing a book. It's not my strength.
Well, I mean, we'll do what we can here on this this little podcast here to help spread the word about your great book. If Final question and kind of final thought here is your grandfather, if he could see your book that you wrote about him, how do you think he would react?
I think he would be very proud because he wouldn't have said these things himself. But for somebody else to do it, I think he would have been proud that his grandson took enough interest in this to do this. I also thought about as much as my mom. My mom was a speech pathologist, and involving in language and speaking, and I think she would have been very proud to do that too. So I was really happy to get it done and happy to get it out there. I'm and it's not a full time job to try to market this. I do other things as well,
Sure.
but it keeps me out of my wife's hair, keeps me keeps me busy. So which is what you're supposed to do when you're retired.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
as far as speaking about wealth, certainly, yeah, no, I don't think anybody gets rich on World War One, but I do think your family is amazingly wealthier for your having written this book. For like they have something that they can always refer to, like, hey, here's our great grandfather and our great great grandfather and so on, and
Yeah.
I think this is great. This is excellent. So this is fantastic. So the
If I
book
could say,
is
if I could say maybe one other thing.
yes, please.
So I got a note or a call from a friend of mine who was a big World War One fan, and he and another friend of his were going to go to France and Belgium to see World War One sites. And he said, "I loved your book." Says, "Do you want to go with us?" So I did. I went to
Oh,
France and Belgium. We went to Ain Marne. We went to Belleau Wood. We went to Chateau Thierry. And we went to a lot of these places. So I was able to track my grandfather's tracks and
absolutely.
follow where he went, which gave me a much better appreciation for where he was, what the trenches were like. And there was three things that just hit me
Yes.
when I was going through this. I found one, there is a very large cadre of people who are still interested in World War One. I mean, people like you, people like Jim Gaspar, who is one of the leader of my trip,
And a
um,
great guy. Yes.
still interested in World War One. There's a smaller group of people who are the people over there, tour guides, people that have B&Bs. There's a great one in Albertville, and Karen and Bart who said,
Yes.
yeah, who had a wonderfully dedicated people to World War One. Um, and then the thing that really hit me was just the absolute beauty of the cemeteries over there, how well they are taken care of by the American Battle Monuments Commission. I'm not sure I'm saying that all right, but
Yes. You got it.
and it's paid for by the United States government, and they are absolutely pristine, beautiful. Would make should make any American proud to go over there, and how important it is that the memory of those people in Europe are still thankful to us for coming in and helping them defeat the Germans in World War One. I mean, it really struck me about how dedicated those people are.
Yeah. Did you have any experiences with any local French? Because they can sometimes like just you know take you like they'll take you off and go show you something that you had no idea that it even existed or anything like that. Like,
We
um,
we had a very several strange, but one strange one where what we were with our guide, and it was Jacques. It was in Ypres, Belgium, and he took us to the German cemetery. And
mhm.
so we went and looked at the German cemetery, and he says, "Here, where you're standing right here, look at this picture." And he opened up the picture, and Adolf Hitler in World War II standing right there, right where we were standing.
Yes. Yep.
It was eerie to know that I was standing in the same place that Adolf Hitler was. I mean,
Right.
things like that just really, are very, very eye-opening and impactful.
God, that's fantastic. That's fantastic that you got to experience getting to know your grandfather, but then also literally following his tracks through France. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Um, so folks, like if again, if you do get a chance, it's great to read about World War One. If you can marry that with a trip over to France to see some of these sites, like we highly encourage it. I'm going to do a bit of shameless self promotion here. Like if you need a tour guide, just reach out to Lost Battalion Tours. But there's other folks too as well. If the timing doesn't work, there's Bart Metzelar, there's Martin Ott, and we can help coordinate communication. But my God, I'm so glad you got over there. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it was really cool. And this is what it's nice to be retired. You can just say, "Okay, I'm going to go."
Man, that is great. That is great. My God, this has been so much fun. This has been great. So the book, folks, is Searching for John DeWitt: How 80 Forgotten Letters from the Trenches of World War One Revealed Timeless Lessons of Honor and Courage. Links on where to buy will be right in the episode notes, so you can literally can order like right through your phone if you like. And I encourage you to. It's an interesting book, really well done, and just something about your grandfather. Your grandfather is a man from another time, and having grown up with those older men around when I was younger, like I don't know, I felt a connection to him too. Like wow, like this is it's a guy from another time, very humble, very quiet, very unassuming. But like wow, the depths he had, those things he had experienced and had seen, and he just went on about his life, like
Right.
amazing, amazing. So I hope, um, John, that you stay out of your wife's hair. I hope that you kill it at pickleball and any other writing projects in the future. You think?
Well, I have this as a delusional idea of putting together a series of joke books. I've been collecting jokes for
All
a
right.
number of years. So doctor jokes, lawyer jokes, teacher jokes. So I'm thinking about that, but I'm finding that I don't know if I can keep affording to keep throwing away this amount of money in in trying to get these books, one published and then two marketed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's great. I hope you're I hope you get to do it. John, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it,
Yeah,
and I'm glad to make connections with you.
awesome, absolutely, and I hope someday our paths can cross over there in France with Jim Gaspar, who I've yet to meet, but he is a very very nice person, very
Yep.
very cool guy.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for
Thank you,
for
Mike.
uh, for coming on.
Okay. Uh-huh.